Hello YouTubers, Alaska Prepper here. Ladies and gentlemen, before I begin, let me go ahead and apologize for that video that I put up yesterday. It was a condensed version of Wednesday's live stream, and what went wrong with that video is that I recorded most of it, about 2/3 of it. I recorded it at about 1.5 or 1.25 times the speed that it normally runs at. So a lot of people really didn't like that. They said it
made my voice sound like a chipmunk. I couldn't really tell the difference because I'm so used to watching so many videos at a higher speed. That's how I usually watch it.
But what I'm going to do is at the end of this video, I'm going to go ahead and include the portion of that video that had all of the questions that I missed during the live stream where I answered them. That way, if you weren't able to catch that video, which I took down because in all honesty, ladies and gentlemen, I don't want to leave something up there that people are going to be frustrated with, because then it's not going to put out any message at all. It's just going to be really a waste of your time, and I don't really want to waste your time, right? However, if you do want to watch that live stream, that's still up, and it was a lot of fun. So I recommend that you go ahead and take a look at it, because we had a lot of fun on Wednesday, and hopefully we'll do that again this coming Sunday. However, today we are going to go over the months of September and part of the month of October from the book, The Great Depression, A Diary, which was written by Mr. Roth. All right, he's the one that actually wrote the diary that this book was comprised of. And what we're doing with this, in case you haven't seen the first 2 episodes of this, or the first 2 parts of this multi-part series that I'm doing, is we're taking a look at the similarities of what happened during the era of the Great Depression and what's happening now in the present, so that hopefully we can learn from what was happening back then, or what happened back then, and what's happening now, in order for us to maybe better prepare for what's coming. Because ladies and gentlemen, in case you haven't heard me say it before, we are headed towards, if not a depression, a greater depression than the one that occurred in 1929 all the way through 1941 or something like that. I think it lasted like 10 years. All right, ladies and gentlemen, so let's go ahead and get started. We are going over the month of September and about half of October on this part of this multi-part series. So in the month of September, Mr. Ross started out by saying that from studying panics from the past in the markets, that the cycle of business is always moving upward towards a boom and moving downward towards a crash, and that it rarely travels at a straight line, which is what he's describing there is just the business cycle. If you all remember, I think it was during our last live stream, I was discussing business cycle, that there's a micro and macro business cycle, that the micro business cycle lasts about 8 to 10 years, and the macro business cycle lasts anywhere between 80 to 100 years. So if we take back all the way to the Great Depression when it started around the late 20s, or very early 30s, we'll see that we are hitting that 80 to 100 year cycle. We're actually right in the middle of it. We're at about 90 years right now from when it started. So we are right in the middle of when the next depression should start. So, that's one thing that I caught on this that I thought was pretty interesting, that we read it in books, that there's a macro and micro business cycles. However, we're actually living it right now. We're getting ready to go towards another Great Depression. And he also reiterates that you should keep dry powder on the side. You know how I always tell you guys you should have a little dry powder on the side? And what does that mean, having dry powder on the side? It means having a little bit of funds on the side, some liquidity on the side, meaning cash that you can get to in a hurry, right? So that whenever the cycle crashes or is on a downward boom, you can take some of your assets, liquid assets, and convert it into assets that are at rock bottom. Pretty much, I think, I forget who it is that says this, but he says that you should sell whenever everyone is really happy and euphoric about the markets, and you should buy whenever there's blood in the streets. So that's kind of like what he's saying as well. And listen to this, ladies and gentlemen. When people go to the bank to withdraw their deposits, they are regarded with suspicion, and depending on the amount that they are to withdraw, they are sent to talk to one of the higher up bank officials, who then tried to shame them into not taking the money out. All right, does that sound familiar? He also noted, ladies and gentlemen, that now, meaning then, during his time, was not a good time to owe money to the bank, because the people that were losing everything were people that had everything leveraged on loans. And he goes on to state that the banks were actually afraid of people that owed them too much money, like businesses that owed them a lot of money, because if those businesses defaulted on their loans, then the banks would have to take the hit. On 8 September, he talks about how small banks are still being absorbed by bigger banks in order to not avoid national bank failures. And that's something that happened back in 2008. And if you do a little bit of research, you'll note that last year in 2020, there was a whole bunch of bank closures as well. Now, I want to read this part to you verbatim because it's what may be happening to us here in the future. Hopefully not. He goes on to say that reform and dissatisfaction are in the air everywhere. People who are ordinarily moderate predict freely that if things do not get better very soon, we will have a revolution in the U.S. and some form of communism or dictatorship. Now, he was saying this back in 1931, ladies and gentlemen, and look at the times that we're living in today. The Depression has lost all the radical thinkers who call themselves liberals. The true liberals and conservatives have been silenced and in disgrace. Does that sound familiar as well? Yeah. On September 13, he talks about how things like peaches are getting cheaper. So like produce and things that farmers and ranchers and, people that actually produce things sell, that they're getting cheaper because there's not that much money in the environment. They're living in a deflationary environment. And while the peach trees were full with no one to buy them, there were thousands of people who were starving. And the peaches were just left out to rot. He goes on to say that people thought that if more money were printed, that business would improve. But he then also states that this theory is false and vicious. And ladies and gentlemen, if you've been listening to me for a while, I agree with him 100%. Because whenever money is printed out of thin air, all it does is it taxes everyone that has earned the money they already have, and it taxes them on the money they're going to earn in the future. It's called inflation. Now, this is interesting, ladies and gentlemen, because during that time also, there were a lot of countries going off the gold standard. All right. So he finishes the month of September by giving his opinion on what going off the gold standard really means. And he says that as far as he can see, going off the gold standard for a country is like a bank refusing to pay its depositors due to the lack of funds. Now, does that sound familiar? That brings me all the way back to August 15th of 1971 when Nixon said that we are going to go off the gold standard. What he effectively did was he declared bankruptcy to all of the countries to whom which we owed that gold to. Right? So that's exactly what we did. That's why I say that starting in 1971 was the true demise of this nation. Because once we gave the government the power to create wealth out of thin air, which really is not creating wealth, it's just stealing the wealth from those who actually worked for it. Once we gave them that power, now they have unlimited powers because they can do whatever they want. Because everything you need to do in life, ladies and gentlemen, especially in a government, everything that the government does requires our wealth. It requires taxation of the people, us, to work and for them to collect taxes on. And whenever they seem to think that it's not politically viable to raise taxes, what do? They still tax us through the power of inflation. Now, he also goes on to say that there were more bank closings. I mean, through this time period, through the entire month of September and this part of October, he states that there were bank closings everywhere, that sometimes big banks took over a lot of little banks, and sometimes even big banks closed as well. Now listen to this, ladies and gentlemen. People were excited about a new plan that gives the Federal Reserve more flexibility to widen its discount basis during times of depression. Now, what does that sound like? It sounds like the Federal Reserve was setting the terms of interest rates as well, right? Listen to this. People were excited about a new plan that gave the Federal Reserve more flexibility to widen its discount basis during the times of depression. Same thing that the Federal Reserve has been asking for about the last year or two. They've been asking for powers to be able to give money directly to the people without it having to go through Congress. All right, so it's just a different time, ladies and gentlemen. We're in a different time, so there are different words now. What does the Federal Reserve say now? Oh, we have plenty of things in our tool bag to combat whatever crisis comes next. But the only thing that the Fed has in their tool bag, ladies and gentlemen, is they can either purchase, things from banks. So like purchase bonds, purchase mortgage-backed securities, lower interest rates, do that. Or they can go ahead and lend money directly to the government by buying treasuries or buying bonds. Despite the new plan, bank failures continue, and most of his local banks were only about 20% liquid at that time. Only one bank in his area was 65% liquid, which is still not really good. Now, to finish it off, through October 17th, he explains how many banks were still failing and closing, and that people were quietly but steadily withdrawing their monies from the banks, which made the bank executives very, very nervous. And at the same time that the people were withdrawing their money from the bank, they were renting out safety security boxes to put their money in that instead of having it in the books of the banks. So ladies and gentlemen, this kind of sounds like a lot of what's going on today. For example, I know quite a few people, including myself, that do not like to leave money in the bank. Why? Because we don't trust that money will be there when we need it most. All right? When everyone is happy and everyone has everything they need and the stock market is going up and everything seems right, or at least the illusion of everything being okay, people are comfortable with leaving their money in an institution that by law doesn't have to return that money to you. However, when things start getting a little scary and it looks like down the road we may have problems, I think that right now there are a lot of people taking their money out of the bank because they just don't trust the banks anymore. Unfortunately, most people nowadays, in the US that is, and I would assume to guess that most people in the world right now with what's going on, are quietly taking their money out of the banks also. But we'll see, because it seems like savings is up, so it seems that a lot of people are still asleep to the fact that the money in the bank doesn't really belong to you. It belongs to the bank. As soon as you deposit that money in the bank, you just signed it over to the bank for them to do whatever they want with, until you take it out and have it in your hands. All right, ladies and gentlemen, so enjoy the Q&A portion of that video that I took down yesterday. Hopefully those of you that had questions that I wasn't able to answer during the live stream will catch your question here. If I did miss your question, bring it up to the next live stream, and hopefully during that time I'll be able to answer all your questions. So ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for joining in today. I hope you got something out of this, and look forward to part number 4 probably sometime next week. I'm going to spread these out about once a week or so, all right, because we do still have a lot to go. I noticed that the book is broken down into volumes. So instead of doing it month to month, I'll take a look and see if we can do it by volume. All right, so we just finished volume 1. So next week we'll do volume 2, depending on how long it is. I really don't want to make these videos extra long. I want to keep them short and concise. That way you can get through it really easily and maybe get something out of it instead of, clicking off, 10 minutes into it because you're getting fatigued of seeing this mug and listening to me talk to you. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for joining in today. Enjoy the rest of the video. Remember to be good to each other. When good people do good things happen. Remember to reach one, teach one, and repeat. If we all did this, the world would be a better place, and you know that it will be a better place. Many blessings to all of you and your families. This is Last Prepper, and I am out. I wanted to start by saying hello to Big Wolf 45, as I did not notice you in the live stream last night. So thank you very much, brother, for joining in. In addition, I wanted to say thank you to Proverbs 31 for the blessing, as I truly appreciate any blessings and in any form that they may come. All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's go ahead and get started with the first question from Nojo. Nojo asks, what is your opinion on the Arrow Garden? Well, Nojo, I think the Arrow Garden is great. Just don't expect it to feed you and your entire family. The reason I have an Arrow Garden and why I think it's great is because it provides me with fresh vegetables in the form of tomatoes and lettuce for the winter months. I also wanted to say hello to Nomadic Rat Pack. Nomadic Rat Pack said, I could not help but to stop in here and say hi after seeing you in the chats and subscribing to your channel recently. So welcome, Nomadic Rat Pack. Truly do appreciate you joining in last night, and welcome. Candace Cullen asked, AP, what would be your top 3 OTC meds to prep? Well, the first one, I would get some Mucinex. And the reason I would get Mucinex is because it already has a pain reliever in it. However, it is very good for whenever you get a cold. At least it's always been really good. It's always decongested my chest and just does a great job, in my opinion. Some of you may not agree with that, but through my experience, Mucinex does a great job. Second thing that I would get is I would get a bunch of antibiotic cream to have around. And then the third thing would be a good source of multivitamins. That way you can have a multivitamin every day in the case that maybe you're not getting all of the nutrition that you should be getting. Now, there are so many other over-the-counter medications that you can get that I'm sure that if we had our choice, we would probably get as many as possible, because the more the better. Not only can you use them for yourselves, but you can use them to barter. So thank you for the question, Candace. Copernicus Worm asked, did you put a link up for the iPad users? Copernicus, there is no way to get a link to the Ladies and Gentlemen's Club. I tried it and I can't figure out a way to get an actual link. The only way that I believe that you can join the Ladies and Gentlemen's Club is by actually finding that join button, clicking on it, and then following the instructions. Lori A says, AP, we need to celebrate. You're one video away from 1,000 videos. Well, ladies and gentlemen, this here should be my 1,000th video, if that's accurate. I still haven't looked to see how many videos I have up, but this should be my 1,000th video, and thank you very much, Lori A, for reminding me. That's pretty awesome. Disabled and prepping, I kept missing you last night. When I was watching the replay, I was like, man, I just ignored disabled and prepping for the entire night. So disabled and prepping asks, what do you think of a jewelry store that sells and buys silver that people buy? I'm not sure what you mean by off-wish, but there's no problem with a jewelry store buying or selling silver. They could be just as good as a coin shop. So if you only have a jewelry store in your area where you can buy and sell silver, and you can build a relationship with the people that run that store and get a fair price on the silver that you buy and or sell to them, I see nothing wrong with it. Jeff Gregory, ever seen any bears where you live, AP? We have not seen any bears here at all. The most that we see here is moose. We've seen some foxes, and we've also seen a wolf, an actual lone wolf, which is pretty cool, but haven't seen any bears here at all. Candace asks again, AP, how did you find the Coleman solar kit? If you mean the Coleman solar kit that I purchased from Costco's at an awesome price of $69.99, I reviewed that a while back. I found them at Costco's, and I think that it's an outstanding value for what I got in it. Now, someone emailed me a while back saying that the Coleman solar kit, the same one that I reviewed a while back, was on sale for $119. So I feel very lucky that I was able to pick up a few of those solar panel kits for just $70 a piece. Rosanna Joan asks, AP, how many oxygen absorbers should I use in my flour? It's stored in a 50-pound Gamma vault. Well, Rosanna, if you have your flour stored in a 50-pound Gamma vault, and that vault is completely sealable, meaning that once you put that lid on, that Gamma lid on, it is completely sealed where no oxygen can get in or out, then what I would do is I would use at least 4,000 to 6,000 cc's of oxygen absorbers. So I would throw 3 2,000 cc oxygen absorbers in there. However, if you're going to be opening that lid every once in a while, there's no need to put any oxygen absorbers in there, because that would tell me that you're using that for your everyday needs. So just go ahead and leave any oxygen absorbers out, put a few bay leaves in there to keep any bugs from wanting to enter it, and then go ahead and use it as an everyday use. And to finish it off, Northern Girl Hobbies asks, what about sterling silver? Absolutely nothing wrong with sterling silver in my opinion. Sterling silver is just a word that is used to clarify or identify the percentage of silver that is used to make whatever is being made with it, be it a coin or silverware or jewelry. Whenever you see sterling silver, what that's telling you is that the silver content in that item is 92.5% silver. That's all that means. So what you do is you weigh whatever item it is, you multiply the weight by 0.925, and that's how much silver is in that item. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I hope that you enjoy the show.
Is that Mr. Tom? Come on. Where are my moderators at? You guys keep letting Mr. Tom in the house.